Hi, this is Reggie Turner. I'm here with Jim Miller, and the FlipSide starts right now. Welcome to the show. Tonight we are joined by Lloyd Riston, the Chief Executive Officer of Valor Excel.
Yes.
And also Mark Appenzeller, the Director of Content Development,
Yes,
correct?
Correct.
Excellent. Welcome both of you to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Good to be here.
Awesome. First and foremost, tell us about Valor Excel.
Well, Valor Excel is a 501c3, and we're a nonprofit here in Hagerstown. We've been around since 2008. We started as a nonprofit that wanted to educate people to help them out of their crisis. And we worked with a lot of low-income, homeless individuals, ex-offenders, maybe people with mental health or addiction issues. And we used an education and coaching approach. And when COVID hit, a lot of the people that we were helping were going to a lot of the other agencies in town, and they were getting a lot of money. So they really didn't need our services because we did require them to do something in order to get the funding for some of their physical needs, like a roof over their head, food in their belly, clothes on their back. But again, when COVID hit, it shifted. The phones weren't ringing, and we had never experienced that kind of problem before. We were always helping people. And so we had to think of some new ways to be relevant and stay impactful in the community. And we started focusing on things that we were good at and things that people were calling us and asking us to help them with. And that's when we kind of morphed into the Valor Excel program, which is providing strategies to help people in both life and business. And so now we're providing the same training and coaching, but we're opening that up to business leaders or organizations that want to learn how to operate in excellence, maybe start a new business or even expand or improve.
Excellent. Jim.
Thank you.
So that's an interesting
It is.
morph.
It is.
Really. How does the nonprofit piece of it kind of move over to the new goals of the organization?
Well, the goals are still there for the individuals that want the help.
Okay.
Change is often scary for people. Sometimes that fear will cause people to paralyze and stay stuck in these circumstances they find themselves in. So while we used to kind of have a captive audience of people that wanted money, we no longer have that, but there are still organizations that work with those people that we're now partnering with to be able to go on the inside of those organizations and meet them where they are. So for instance, we partner with CASA, where we work with domestic violence victims and the abusers, and we go in and do personal development coaching with them to help them through that crisis. We also work with Hannah's Homestead, which is a recovery program here in Washington County. And we're also starting to partner with Goodwill with their youth, it's called youth, oh my gosh, can't think of the name.
Suffice to say, Goodwill.
Yeah, it's a good youth program for people, disconnected youth, 16 to 24.
Okay, great. And on the newfound elements that you've included, can you give us some more detail on? Again, I think you covered at a high level that it could be a business person. Is there personal coaching that happens as part of this newly created service structure?
Yes, in fact, we just have a new client that's starting with personal development coaching. Next week she actually starts, but in the meantime, she wants to start a small business. So in addition to that, we're going to start coaching her to reach those professional goals or those career goals she has for herself. And we just opened up a small business incubator to help some of these people that maybe are on the lower income scale that are maybe more fearful than maybe some middle class people to start. They don't know where to begin. So we're making it very easy for them to come in and not only get space to start their business, but we're also providing them with the training and the coaching to help them reach those goals.
So talk to me about what some of the training would look like on the business side. What types of things do you offer these clients?
Well, I'll let Mark tell you about that because we're now just putting together some of these trainings. But they're very basic, but they're also a lot of topics that people that are just starting out would not know how. So Mark,
Sure.
you want to address some of that?
Well, one of the aspects of what we're doing is we do offer paid services if someone is seeking assistance with web development, for example, or writing a grant. But in conjunction with that too, we want to really take the experiences that we had operating for many years as a small nonprofit and try to distill that so that it's beneficial to other nonprofits or small businesses that are in the process of getting started. And one of the things that we do that I actively work in is helping to do operations analysis and really mapping the processes of an organization. Because sometimes we'll see a scenario where an organization is either starting out and growing very suddenly and they're not sure how to compensate for that growth, or maybe they've been in existence for a while and they feel like they're stagnating. Maybe they utilize volunteers and they have a high turnover and they face challenges of really communicating to new groups of people how they conduct their business operations. So one of the things that we can do is to come in and really work with them to analyze what they're currently doing and try to find effective ways to do things consistently, because the two things that we always try to promote are being consistent and being able to sustain what you're doing. And we feel like our goal, as Lori said, we're always about trying to help individuals or businesses to thrive, and part of that, I think, is to really instill this idea that you need to build your own credibility. And so even though there are certain things that we can do, whether it's a service that we're providing or we're assisting the client, but ultimately we really want to inspire the client to take that ownership themselves. It's not the idea of us coming in to fix something that's broken, but it's to really empower the client and to provide them with tools and guidance that can really help them to make their own decisions and make their own corrections.
Interesting.
But some of the trainings that we offer right now, we can teach people how to use Office 365. Some people still don't know how to use that. We can teach them how to process their workflows and get the knowledge that's out of somebody's head and onto a piece of paper. Because if someone leaves the office or the organization, that information could be gone. We can also help teach them how to use some like Canva for marketing, or we can help them design a website. We can teach them how to design a website through Wix. I mean, there's just a lot of things that we're offering that most people are scared to even try. We can teach them how to write grants. There's just various things that we can teach them how to do, and we do that in like a 1-hour setting. And some of the subjects may be a little bit more involved, but it seems to be working.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, not only do you work with new nonprofits, but existing nonprofits that may be stuck or need help in any transition or situation that they're in as
Right.
well.
But even small businesses have come to us for assistance because they want to go to the next level, or maybe they don't know the software that they should use or the processes they should be focusing on to reach that level of excellence. Because COVID taught us one thing, it's that we have to always be proactive. There's 3 stages to that: inactivity, reactivity, or proactivity. And we want our clients to be proactive so they can succeed.
Excellent. Lori, Mark, take a few moments and tell us a little bit about your personal backgrounds
Well,
and what led you to this work.
That's a very interesting question. I was in sales for a number of years. I was the sales manager, regional sales manager for an oil company. I traveled 6 states. I had 11 divisions, and I was doing very well. I do not have a college degree, but I was making a 6-figure income, and I felt that I really wanted to help people who were in crisis because I had grown up in crisis, and I was able to overcome some of those things and be successful. So I turned my focus over to community service. I thought that might be in a church, but it wasn't. And I really am glad it wasn't, because I enjoy working with people where they are. So initially, I traveled down to Biloxi, Mississippi with Samaritan's Purse right after Hurricane Katrina, and I was helping with the mud outs and things down there. But while I was there, I realized that the principles of restoration that they were using down there could work back here, meaning sometimes things have to be completely destroyed before you can fix it again. And that was very exciting to me. So when I came back, I was just open to possibilities. Then in 2008, Valor Ministries is what the organization is really rooted in, started. And again, that was an education ministry, trying to educate people out of their problems. And then over the years, just more and more doors kept opening. And now we've morphed into where we've kind of been brought full circle, because I have business management experience, and I have church management experience, and I have nonprofit management experience, which is kind of unique. Not everybody has that. So I think that is where I can kind of come in and with an ear to know what may not work currently and how it can work better in the future.
And Mark, tell us about yourself.
Sure.
As well.
Well, I came from a 29-year career in the merchant services industry, and I worked for several very large corporations, and my background there was project management and technical writing and operations analysis. And it was really at the kind of the summer of 2014, I guess, I really did not want to be in the corporate world anymore. And I already was friends with Lori and her husband, and I was aware of what at that time was the Valor Crisis and Training Center. And I was interested in maybe approaching it from a volunteer perspective, so that's how I first came in. And then about 6 months later, I was hired on staff. And so over the years, I kind of ended up working just about every position. And at the end of when we were still doing the crisis assistance, I was the operations manager. So for me, coming from 3 decades in a corporate background, I saw so many situations where I saw a lot of chaos and a lot of confusion and things not being done well, but it wasn't immediately visible to people because there was so much money behind the scenes. But then when you come into a small nonprofit and funds are tight and you have to be very careful about what you're doing, you really start learning creative problem solving. So in my years at what is now Valor Excel, I tried to bring the experiences that I had in the corporate setting and figure out how to plug that into the smaller realm of the nonprofit. And that has really fueled a lot of what we've developed, because our goal is to really try to help organizations to operate as efficiently, but also as cost efficiently as they can. And it's not always about throwing money at a problem, and a lot of times money will create more problems. And it really is about stepping back and looking at everything that you're doing and then figuring out the best way to move forward.
Well, one of the things we've talked about on the show, I know in our community, there's over 700 nonprofits. So
Oh, yes.
the need for your services in the nonprofit community are probably greater than what the community realizes that you offer. When you work with nonprofits, do you work normally with the executive directors? You work with the board of directors? What's kind of that working relationship? What does it look like?
Well, we actually work with initially probably the management staff, and then we work with some of their support staff. So for instance, when we're working with CASA, we do work with the executive director to, I guess, plan how we're going to work and the services are going to be offered. But then on the day in and day out things, we're working with their staff that are right there with the clients that they're serving, that we're all serving. But again, we're moving past just nonprofits, because right now we have somebody coming in our incubator that wants to be a counselor, and they're starting their own counseling practice. Another is a trucking industry. Another is a cleaning company. So we're trying to also focus on economic development. And that's important, because what we were talking about earlier, we have to make sure Washington County survives as well. So that's important to us too.
Excellent. Jim?
As you look around the community, what are the critical needs that you see in business, in nonprofits, in personal that you feel like you can address? What are the most critical of the things that you are doing right now that you see in the community?
Well, from my experience, I think the critical need is knowledge or training. I think a lot of the people that run the organizations might have the knowledge in order to do the work, but maybe some of the employees may not, the day-to-day operations. And so we just want to come in and help them learn, as Mark said, at a very reasonable rate. Because again, if it's a nonprofit or a small business, they don't have a lot of money to put towards something like that. And we are grant funded to do some of this work. And we also raise funds through some other business partnerships we have and development services that we provide to fund some of these small businesses and nonprofits.
So what is your go-to-market strategy in this new version of the organization post-COVID? Other than appearing on this show, what has been your go-to-market strategy?
Well, we developed a new website recently. We started working on our branding and our message, and we've been, I think, doing a pretty good job with that. In the very near future, we're going to have some billboards out, and we're going to do some radio advertising in order to get the message out specifically about helping people with their business priorities and their business goals. Because if you look at a personal life and a professional life side by side, they really do interact. If something's off at home, it's going to affect you at work. If you're having a terrible day on the job, that's going to come home at work too. If you're not satisfied at work, you can take that out on people and you can do stupid things. So we really want to address both, and those same things work. The training and the coaching, it works for both. So that's what we're trying to focus on, and just getting the word out has been a little difficult, won't lie, because we're not as, we don't have as deep pockets as a lot of the other organizations in town, but that's starting to change. And we just kind of, and Mark can attest to this, when we get an idea that we know will work, we kind of chase the idea. We put some legs behind it, so to speak. We plan it thoroughly, and then we pursue that. We don't necessarily pursue the money, because if it's a good strategy and a good idea, the money tends to follow us. And so that's what we're currently doing, is just kind of following that plan we put in place.
Okay, great. So talk about some of the partnerships or collaborations you've had. You've talked about a few in the nonprofit community. Talk about more of those.
Well, we're getting very heavily involved in the chamber, and not just the Washington County Chamber, the Hagerstown Chamber. Now we're also starting to develop relationships with other chambers in Franklin County. We're developing a relationship with the Waynesboro Chamber of Commerce and the Shippensburg Chamber of Commerce. We've been asked to be keynote speakers at several of their events. We've also been asked to bring trainings and workshops to their members, and then we're going to be starting that in the spring. So we're very excited about that, and we're hoping that will grow. We're actively pursuing right now quad state area. So we want to go into Virginia, we want to go into Berkeley County, we want to go into more into PA, and then Maryland.
So in terms of the staff that you have, how big is your staff, and how big would you like to see it grow?
Well, I have big ideas.
Nothing wrong with that.
I dream big. We once had a staff of 11, and myself on top of that. I was an unpaid staff person for a lot of years. I was just doing it for the love of people and bettering the community. But right now there are 5 of us. We're growing back from the little hiccup we had based on COVID.
That was a hiccup for everybody.
That was a hiccup for everybody. But it's actually been a wonderful transition. It couldn't have been any better. We love our new location. We're in the same building. We are in the E.M. Tobias Family Center on Antietam Street, which used to be the Fennel Building.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we love it there. We have a really nice suite there. And so
now, you had mentioned some incubator facility. Where
that's
is
in
that?
our location.
Okay, so these are separate offices then?
No, it's right in our suite. So it's like a shared space, and the people that come in that are starting their business or their new nonprofit, they come in and they get some shared space. So they get a desk, they get the use of the internet, the copier, the printer, everything that they would need, a phone, supplies, all of that, and then they get one free training and one free coaching session each month. But then of course they're around us all the time, and as they run into problems, we can stop what we're doing and help them.
Okay, so unlike the incubator at HCC, this is more about the hands-on, personal touch type of thing, rather than just, we have cheap rental space for you to start your business in. And I'm not saying, HCC incubator is great.
Right, I am. Yes, and I'm fully aware of their incubator, and I hope to achieve that level someday. But right now we're focusing on the people that may not have the courage to go that deep into it yet. I mean, they are just starting out, and so one of the things with the grant we just received from the Rural Economic Development grant funding, they can actually get 1 year of free participation in the program.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm excited about that.
The grant funding that you go after, is it only state funding, or do you go after federal funding as well?
We haven't gone after federal funding, but that's about to change. We made our mind up here in the last month or so that it's time for us to do that. We've been pretty successful with the grants we've requested here for the business end of things that we're trying to pursue. So we're pretty excited about that.
And with the development that's happening in downtown Hagerstown and new businesses popping up and trying to survive and make
Right.
it through COVID, how active are you with those business owners in the downtown corridor?
Well, we just hired someone to help us with that. Danielle Pop is one of our newest employees, and she's going to become that face in the community for us. We want her to be out and about meeting with chamber members and businesses in the community to let them know who we are and what we do, but then also how we can help them. And we just want to help as many as we can. And that is one of the strategic plans, I believe, for the city of Hagerstown, was to actually have some sort of a business incubator right in the city. And we are in there right now. But they might not know that yet. That's why we're trying to get some people in there to talk to them. And now with the new leadership, Takesha, we have worked with Takesha in the past in the missional side of Valor. And so we're excited to talk with her about what we're doing.
Excellent. Anything else, Jim?
Nope.
So the question that I'll ask is that 5 years from now, with your vision, how will your organization look and what will you have accomplished?
Well, I am kind of the visionary, but I don't want to hog this. I really see us on the inside of businesses. So what I mean by that is, whether it's a small business or a nonprofit, the people that work for them, again, have problems. And sometimes they bring those to work. I would like to see us bring our coaching to the inside of those businesses. So they may initially contact us to help them through something that they need done for their organization. But if we can gain their trust, hopefully they'll allow us to come in with some of our coaches maybe once a week or once a month to be available for people that are experiencing some kind of a problem or an obstacle.
Interesting.
Well, and I think along with that too, one of the goals that I have with everything that we develop in terms of our content is beyond things that are actually a paid service. We also want to be able to offer free resources because we really want to see every business in Washington County thrive. We really want to, be able to encourage those that are struggling or that are just starting out. And so one of the things, we do have a YouTube channel, and every week we have content that is specifically geared towards small businesses or nonprofits. Sometimes it's a little bit more conceptual, and then other times it might be discussing a particular process, or we try to always look at things like freeware and things that are, again, the cost effective for someone that might be struggling to overcome some obstacle. So I would really like to see there be a knowledge base that we can contribute to the community that is there, beyond whatever else we do, because we really want people to benefit from what we've learned, and just be able to let that be something that's lasting.
One of the things that is not necessarily free, but we just put out is the Face Your Fears Guide to Basic Grant Writing book, and that's available on Amazon. And we're trying to help people that may not want to pay for our course, our online course, but would like to have that book to be able to help them if they're a little nervous about their first grant. So those are the kind of things we're doing too. We're also developing workbooks and goal books, goal setting books, and things of that nature that people can purchase and work with in their spare time.
Excellent. Well, it's very encouraging because the shift in your business model is very timely for the growth that we're trying to accomplish within our community.
Right.
And you've hired someone to be boots on the ground within the community to talk more about your services. So that's exciting to hear, and we wish you guys the best of luck on everything.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank
thank
you
you very
so
much.
much. We take that.
So thank you, Lori and Mark from Valor Excel, for spending time with us today, and I'm sure we'll have you back to get an update to benchmark to see
That's great.
if you guys are accomplishing the dream.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Stay with us, and we'll have more of the flip side after the break. Welcome back to the show. Jim, let's jump into some topics that are in our news right now. On a national level, we've seen this week that our U.S. consumer confidence has retreated, and also home price inflation has cooled. What say you?
Well, I'm not surprised by either. I think that the home price inflation is the only inflation that's cold, at least when I go to the grocery store, although I did notice that the price of eggs went down. But yeah, I'm not surprised. And I know that this is the way economists expect it to work when the market is overwrought with demand, it drives
Yes.
prices up, and then we get to a point where people are not willing to spend those prices anymore, and the market cools off, and they go in a different direction. My principal concern is how much will it cool? What will this recession, whatever you want to call it, I know we don't like to use that word if we're a politician, but where is this going to end? Is this going to be a big one? Is this going to be a small one? Is this going to be a blip? And my bigger concern is that, in my view, this is largely a self-induced problem with the out-of-control spending of our government.
Agreed.
We have printed money for enough years.
In the midst of the pandemic, we overdid it. But Jim, we have to acknowledge, though, that governments around the world overdid it. It's
They
not
did.
just the U.S.
No, I'm
it's
not-
just
I'm
not
not arguing
U.S.
that point.
in regards to that.
But how many of those
It's a-
followed
it's a
our
world.
lead? Because
Some
we
of
know
them
what
followed
we're
our
doing.
lead, but some of them jumped out there and we're trying to get ahead of it as well.
Well, that's fine.
But it's a global problem that we have to deal with.
But you know what? We're supposed to be the leaders of the free world. And with that moniker comes an expectation that we actually know what we're doing. And clearly, I completely understand that I'm not an economist, but you gotta believe that somebody knew that the inevitable result of all of that money was inflation.
Well, the
inflation.
problem with these decisions, especially in the midst of COVID, they weren't purely economic decisions; they were also political.
Oh, they
decisions.
were absolutely political decisions.
So
that's the problem.
that
We're
is a
running
problem.
we're running our government on politics these days. There is no notion of what's best for the country. It's what's going to get me reelected.
Yeah. So one of the articles that I came across today in regards to kind of mortgage demand dropped for home buyers to a 28-year low.
Yep.
And it was kind of three factors that came out of that. Mortgage demand fell for the third week straight, as interest rates are still going up. Mortgage applications to buy homes are down 6% last week over the previous week, so it's still dropping. And mortgage rates have moved up another 0.5% in the past month. And the Federal Reserve has signaled that they're going to stay steadfast in raising interest rates through this year, which will further cool off the demand here. But they have to keep their foot on the gas to stave off inflation in all the areas that it's not increasing enough because, job growth is still relatively high. So it's an interesting place in regards to where we are. The cooling off in mortgages is a good sign for what they're doing, but we're not seeing it enough in the other areas for it to impact. And it's been affecting the stock market. We're on track for 5 weeks of negative returns, in the S&P, unless there's a huge turnaround in the next day or two. So we do have some challenges ahead that we have to address. But this is also a signal that we're not building another bubble in real estate as these things back off.
You think we're not?
I don't believe we are.
All right. I think this is one of the times that Cronkite Turner might be wrong.
We'll see.
We shall see.
It hasn't been many in the past year, but let's benchmark this one for us to come back to.
And you're not shy about saying that, are you?
I am not.
Here's the other thing. We see, even though that the jobs report was extraordinary in January,
Yes.
right? The reality is that we see a lot more companies announcing layoffs. And some of the companies that traditionally hadn't laid off in previous economic downturns, including the tech sector, are now having significant layoffs. And as someone who hires technical resources, I can tell you for sure that it's not a seller's market anymore.
Right.
And that's going to have an impact.
Except for in the state of Maryland.
Well, okay. The other thing that concerns me is the notion that we have, we talk on this program a lot about the low-income workers, the middle-income workers, and I am not a fan of minimum wage. I know there's a bill in the Maryland legislature at this point to fast track the update to $15 an hour. Well, number one, most people are there already, and number two, $15 an hour doesn't cut it when you're paying, $6 for the eggs you used to pay $2 for, among many other things. So what are we going to do now? And I remember sitting on this set with my good friend Ron Bowers and saying that the inevitable response to rising wages is rising prices on goods. Oh no, it'll never happen because these CEOs are going to just take cuts in their salary. No, they're not.
That's not going to happen. That's not the capitalistic way.
It's not.
And you're jumping a little bit ahead, but let's do this. Let's take a quick break.
Okay.
And let's come back and talk about the Fair Wage Act that's on the table in the state of Maryland. Fair
All
enough?
right.
Stay with us, and we'll have more in regards to minimum wage and proposed increases accelerating after the break. Welcome back to the show. Jim, here in the state of Maryland, Governor Moore is proposing the Fair Wage Act. And just to give a brief summary, in 2019, there was a bill passed for minimum wage to start to moderately increase to get to $15 an hour, I believe, by 2025. The Fair Wage Act is proposing to move it up to expedite it to this year.
Right.
To $15 an hour.
And
to index it to inflation.
Bingo.
Going forward.
Right.
In the House, there was a hearing just 2 days ago where Governor Moore and some of his staff came to testify in regards to this. Tomorrow in the Senate side, there will be a hearing in regards to this in the committees to see how it advances. What say you about this?
Yeah, I think that, I don't see a problem expediting it to $15 an hour immediately or in October. I see a huge problem with tying it to the Federal Consumer Price Index.
Yes.
Wasn't there a stock market crash because somebody figured out that they could automate the process of when to buy or sell, and the computers went crazy? And am I wrong about that?
You mean the flash crash?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was just a quick moment in time.
It was a quick moment in time, but the point, I think that to tie this to the federal price index is almost a dereliction of duties of our elected officials, because I think there is a lot more. This is not a single poll issue. This is not just about the federal price index. There's a whole lot of things that need to go into making the decision on whether we're going to raise minimum wage or not. And this focuses only on one. And it would automate that process, and I don't think it's a good idea.
Well, the one mechanism that Governor Moore, when he testified, he kept reiterating is that there's a mechanism that if we are in adverse economic conditions,
right,
the Board of Public Works would have the ability to come in and suspend any increases. And
nothing political about that, right?
Well, it's very political, and that was the testimony of some of the groups that came in, I believe, such as the Maryland Chamber of Commerce, where their concern was that if the Board of Public Works is making the decision, it then becomes a political decision in regards to it happening, making it less likely that there would ever be a suspension of the raising of minimum wage. I find it a little problematic in regards to what we're talking about of it being indexed by the consumer price index. I really do find that problematic. And here's the reason why, and it was something else that was articulated in the House hearing. One of the things you've said is that many businesses have already approached the $15 an hour threshold or exceeded.
Yeah, have you driven by the out on Valley Mall Boulevard and seen the signs up for FedEx starting wages $20 to $24
Right.
an hour for moving boxes?
Right.
For moving boxes.
So one of the concerns is that when you have the government leaning in so hard on free markets, does it disincent businesses to make the prevailing wage competitive in the marketplace? For example, this bill says that any increases should be capped at 5% each year, right? So in this political climate or this economic environment, number one, any increases would not be keeping up with inflation, right? And
Right.
based on where inflation is right now. But the other thing is, what if it incented businesses just to move up to whatever the inflationary increases are, as opposed to what is competitive in the workplace? Does it incent businesses to not be as competitive when you're just only trying to keep up with what the government is doing? Because if we look at it historically, the CPI, we're looking at roughly about 2% increases on average, right, per year in regards to that. And again, as you've said, many businesses are well beyond those type of increases and are well beyond $15 minimum. And I'm just wondering, what will that incentive look like? That's one concern. The other concern is that for small businesses, those with 15, and I know we look at small business as, I believe, 100 employees or less. But what about the smaller business, the micro businesses, the companies with 15 employees or less? Many of those companies, as we are in this inflationary period, we're still dealing with supply chain issues. They have not budgeted in this increase to start this year, not to this level.
Well, I would bet the majority of businesses, small or otherwise, haven't budgeted
Right.
for this year.
So with the economic pressures that they're already facing to do this now,
And by the way, in what is obviously, in my view at least, a declining economy at this point,
right?
yeah, not good.
And if you look at the fiscal and policy note, there's going to be a governmental cost too, because the government is going to have to raise some wages in some areas too.
Well, and guess
regards
what?
to that as
Guess
well.
what? Even those that are making above minimum wage, as minimum wage goes up, there's an expectation that those that are a little above the minimum wage will go up. If I'm making $3 more an hour than minimum wage, and minimum wage goes up, what does that conversation look like?
And this is what's going to make this whole thing interesting, right? Because the president of the Senate, Bill Ferguson, one of the things that he said is that the indexing is a tough issue, meaning even among Democrats,
Oh, it is,
that
absolutely.
that is an issue where they believe that there may need to be some tweaks there. And maybe that's where the compromise, because I believe this will pass because the Democrats have enough to make it pass. I think the conversation is really slanted towards the workers more so than it is the businesses in this conversation. And it's going to be interesting to see how this moves and what tweaks may be offered to this bill. But for the president to come out and say, or the Senate to come out and say the indexing is a tough issue, of indexing it to CPI, that makes me think that there's going to be some negotiations there. And then the other thing is including the Board of Public Works to make the decision on when to suspend it based on the economic environment, as opposed to using the data to tell you, to give specific measures of when it should be suspended, is going to be problematic as well.
Well, I think my guess is that the indexing feature will go away. And what we'll do is we will set up this new minimum wage or the accelerated minimum wage, but we'll immediately tie onto it another increase over a period of time.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. Like I said, the hearing on the Senate side is tomorrow. So for those that are in the weeds like me, the House and the Senate do live stream their committee meetings, so you will be able to see it or go back in and watch it later.
Yep.
On the Senate side, that is SB 555, and on the House side, I believe is House Bill 540. For those that would like to jump in and kind of follow this conversation and see where things are going.
Excellent.
All right. Well, Jim, I think we've covered that pretty good. Obviously, we'll get to revisit it to see if it makes it out of committee, if there's any amendments offered and where that'll go. But how about we take a quick break and we'll come back with Fast Five.
Indeed.
All right. Excellent. Stay with us and we'll have Fast Five after the break. Welcome back to the show. Jim, it's time for Fast Five, so let's jump right into it. The University System of Maryland at Hagerstown names a new executive director. His name is Jacob Ashby. What say you?
I don't know Mr. Ashby. Reading his curriculum vitae, I would say that he is well suited for the job. I would also say that if you've met anyone or if you're friends with anyone that is on that board, they are very protective of that organization, and I have no doubt that they will do their usual amazing job in picking a new leader for the organization. So I'm very optimistic about Mr. Ashby, and anxious to see what changes he will propose and what's next for our university systems of Maryland at Hagerstown.
And it sounds like we should probably be reaching out to get him on the show.
We absolutely will be doing that. By the way, he is only the third director or chief for that USMH. And think about how long USMH has been here.
So it basically shows it's been a stable system.
It has been a stable system. Well, no, it's not been a stable system. It's been a growing system.
Right.
Yeah.
But stable in regards to employment and leadership.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He was formerly with Frederick Community College. He was employed by various roles with that college since 2011. He had an interim position as associate vice president. He has been on the classroom side of things. He was an adjunct instructor and lecturer, both at FCC and Hagerstown Community College. Yeah, I think I'm anxious to see what his plans are.
Right,
and
so
I
his
think
vision
he's
is.
taking over an organization that is already very strong, that hopefully will be made even stronger through his leadership.
Excellent. Jim, next topic. Band patron alleges Boonesboro restaurant discriminated against him for being old and white.
Yeah.
This is Dan's Tap House in Boonesboro, right
Yep.
on the main street. And, this restaurant has been in controversy before, a few years back in the midst of Black Lives Matter protests and other things. What say you about this issue?
Yeah, so I guess I have no notion as to whether this lawsuit has any hope to move forward or not. I would say that it's probably not a good idea for whomever made the decision to kick what is now a circuit court judge out of the restaurant, who wasn't even participating in whatever the other patron was supposedly doing. This is not good for them. This is not a good look. If you read the article in the Herald Mail, and I would recommend that because it's a pretty good article, it doesn't paint a good picture in my view.
Yeah. This restaurant is, and its owners have been in the midst of controversy before. They also seem to be a target because of some of the political beliefs of one of the owners. I think this is a petty squabble.
It could be.
That's really just a distraction. The thing for me is, I know that they held a minor protest of 10 or 15 people that were standing out in front. And obviously, this argument is lining up around political lines. Right?
Oh, it is. Absolutely.
So Republicans are normally the champions of small business. I don't understand why you're attacking one of the most prominent small businesses in Boonesboro at this juncture, because it just seems like this is an ongoing fight between two groups and their political issues that doesn't serve the community well at all.
When you say you're attacking, you're as in me, or you're as in
The groups.
The groups.
The groups.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't saying you, Jim.
So-
because you're a rhino now.
Okay, I appreciate that. So, from my perspective, that decision whether to make this a thing or not is not in anybody's hands other than the litigants that have brought the suit against Dan's Tap House. So, if they're going to do it, and if some of this is true, yeah, I don't. If I had a guess, and it is a guess at this point, obviously, because we never know what our judicial system's going to do. But they say it's going to be struck down. I'm not sure it's going to be struck down as quickly as what they think.
Well, here's the thing. If this is really about someone's rights being infringed upon, why is there such a petty battle that's ensuing? If you have confidence in your case and the legal system and those around them to support that, let the legal system work.
Yeah.
But that's not what we have here. And again, the owners of Dan Tap House are not, I'm definitely not defending them, because there was some foolishness that they were involved in a few years back. We really didn't cover it on the show, and I really don't think this deserves that much more coverage either. So.
No, I agree. This is the one and only time you'll probably hear this, saving and accepting some crazy development that no one expects.
Yeah.
But I will tell you personally, I'm going to follow it just because it's a curious case.
Well, if you're up scrolling social media late at night, and you need something to occupy your time, I mean, this is kind of it. You can kind of follow and look at the YouTube videos and the foolishness is being said. But other than that, it's entertainment for me.
Yeah, so I have to budget my time wasting, but I'll certainly read the headlines.
Fair enough. Next, activists gather in Annapolis as hearings begin on gun control.
Yep, who didn't see this one coming?
That's pretty typical, right?
Yeah.
You got nothing?
I think that we're going to put something in place, probably, because we can, because the Democratic Party has the governor's mansion and has sufficient leads in the House and Senate to do it.
Yep.
There is a notion that it would be struck down as unconstitutional by Supreme Court. Supreme Court is certainly more conservative these days than it has been in the past, at least for the time being. So, I don't know. I think this is one we need to watch and see where it goes.
I agree, we need to watch it, see where it goes. This is an ongoing battle in the state of Maryland. Obviously,
It's an ongoing battle in every state in the country.
Across the country. But the state may say something that may need to go to the Supreme Court. So we'll see how that moves. Next, Jim, tipping etiquette has gotten out of control. Is it time we start to talk? And it's time we start to talk about it. I can agree with that from a certain extent. And I'll give you an example. I was at the York Fairgrounds for my daughter's volleyball tournament, and went to the little concession stand to get my daughter something to eat and give my card. And the lady's like, "Do you want to leave a tip?" Because their machine is going to ask you if you want to leave a tip just at the normal
Because they all do
concession
now.
stand. Yeah,
Right.
so it's just, everywhere you go in every service, it's suggesting that you leave a tip.
Yeah,
Even if, in many cases you're serving yourself.
right.
So it is a little out of control.
It
but,
is very out of control.
But unless the businesses are automatically tagging it onto your bill, you as a consumer still have all the control.
Well, you do. Now, obviously, that there are some percentage of those workers who work for less than the minimum wage,
Yes.
with the assumption that it will be made up in tips.
And tips.
And, I am not anti-tips at this point. I would like to see another better system, But I also think it's very entrepreneurial to tie a server's ability to make money to his or her customer service.
Right.
So I don't think that's a bad idea. And I'm one that I won't ever not leave a tip at a restaurant. If more often than not, I'm at 20% or above.
Agreed. I am as well. And that's one thing I want to clarify. If I'm just receiving a basic service, like almost like if I'm going to a convenience store and buying something, I'm not looking to tip you.
No.
But if I'm sitting down and I'm being served, if there's a service being provided, then I'm normally going to tip 20% or better.
Yeah,
But it
that's
was
where I
just
am.
like I'm just walking to a window to get a hot dog, and it was like, "Do you want to leave a tip?" Like, no, I don't.
No, I don't want to leave a tip.
Yeah. So it was just a little weird.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I think that the article that I read mentions that part of this is the fact that these new iPad and other based point of sale systems, Toast, Clover, Square, all of those just automatically
Yeah.
have a default option to say do you want a tip? And that's fine. But I don't think that means we have to.
So-
and I also think
If you get takeout somewhere, do you tip? If you go pick it up?
it depends. If I'm ordering a complex order, yes, I probably will. If I'm getting just I rarely visit Starbucks, but when I do, or Dunkin', it's to buy an unsweetened iced tea. I'm not going to tip for that.
Gotcha. I'm with you there. Last topic, Jim. We have the mystery
By the way, I
dust.
am in favor of, doing away with the whole substandard wages and making people make it up with tips. I think that's not a bad idea. And then perhaps that brings the tipping percentage down a little bit, but I think that that's not a bad idea.
Gotcha. Last one, the mystery dust in West Virginia. There was an analysis done of mystery dust that was falling from the air last week. Social media was flooded. People had all these conspiracy theories in regards to what it was, but it was mainly pollen and trace amounts of mineral water.
Yeah, mineral matter. Yeah, for sure.
Not mineral water, mineral matter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I saw some of the conspiracy theorists. Where's the China balloon that we're not seeing? Is it dumping stuff? I mean, there's all kinds of craziness out there, but there's all kinds of craziness about everything.
Absolutely.
I was not affected by the mystery dust, but it's interesting.
You're close to the West Virginia line.
I am close to the West Virginia line. I am officially a river rat. But yeah, I think it's an interesting story. It's a fun story, and
Yeah.
It
got folks riled up for a little bit.
Yeah, if it soothed somebody's mind to go get the mystery dust tested, well then so be it. Let's
There you
go
go.
test it.
And some people weren't even satisfied with that because they wanted an independent lab to do it as opposed to
Right,
the state. So
because the government lies to us, right?
There we go.
There you go.
All right. Well, that is all the time that we have for tonight. We hope that you'll like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us your comments to feedback@theflipsidetv.com. That is feedback@theflipsidetv.com. But most importantly, join us again next week for another episode of The Flip Side.